That golden retriever wasn't barking at the snowbank. It was smelling a human being buried alive underneath it. Its nose, 100,000 times more powerful than a human's, had detected an invisible scent cone of carbon dioxide and skin cells rising through the snow. The dog knew what the family couldn't see. Someone was trapped down there and the clock was already ticking. In a blizzard, you have just 15 minutes before the cold winds. This is the reality for avalanche rescue dogs, trained to find the buried in minutes when technology fails. But this wasn't a mountain slope. This was a suburban street during a record blizzard, and the dog leading the rescue wasn't a trained rescue K9. It was a golden retriever service dog named Leo, who was supposed to be guiding his owner home. So what was he doing alone, barking desperately at a snowdrift in front of a confused father and his 6-year-old triplet daughters? And who was the woman slowly freezing to death beneath their feet? Understand how this suburban nightmare began. You have to meet Mark, a recently widowed father of 6-year-old triplet girls. His world had already been upended by loss. His wife Emily had passed from a sudden illness 18 months prior. Now Mark was navigating the chaos of parenthood alone in a quiet subdivision in upstate New York. The triplets, Chloe, Emma, and Sophie, were a whirlwind of energy and matching red winter coats. That Tuesday, February 12th, started normally. The local news had mentioned a coming storm, but upstate New York gets snow. It's a fact of life. Mark had dismissed the early warnings as just another winter weather advisory. He was more focused on getting the girls from school to their piano lesson than to the grocery store. The storm, however, had different plans. A clash of weather systems over the Great Lakes was brewing what meteorologists would later call a bomb cyclone. A rapid drop in atmospheric pressure was about to unleash snowfall rates of over 3 inches per hour, with winds gusting to 50 miles per hour. Whiteout conditions. By 3 p.m., when Mark was loading the giggling triplets into his SUV, the first flakes were falling. It was picturesque. By 3:45, as they left the grocery store parking lot, it was a wall of white. The 15-minute drive home turned into a 45-minute crawl. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. The world shrank to the faint red glow of the taillights in front of them. Inside the car, the mood shifted. The girls' laughter quieted, replaced by nervous questions. "Daddy, why is it so dark? Will we get home?" Mark's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his focus absolute. He missed his turn. Disoriented in the blur, he took what he thought was a familiar shortcut down Maple Crest Drive. It was a decision that would place them directly in the path of another person fighting the same storm. Her name was Sarah Bennett, 32 years old, a freelance graphic designer who lived 3 streets over from Mark. Sarah had been born with a degenerative eye condition. By her late 20s, her world had faded to light, shadow, and vague shapes. Her independence was hard-won, anchored by a 70-pound golden retriever named Leo. Leo wasn't just a pet. He was her guide, her mobility partner, her bridge to the world. That afternoon, Sarah had made a critical mistake. She needed a specific medication. Her pharmacy was a 10-minute walk away. She made the trip with Leo 100 times. She checked the weather app, which predicted the storm's peak arrival for 5 p.m. She figured she had time. She and Leo set out at 3:30. The storm accelerated. By 4 o'clock, they were caught in the heart of it. The howling wind disoriented even Leo. Familiar scent markers were buried. The punishing snow piled up, drifts forming in minutes. Sarah, clinging to Leo's harness, was now utterly dependent on his training. He was trained for traffic, for obstacles, for guiding. He was not trained for a complete whiteout blizzard. They were 1 block from her house when it happened. A ferocious gust of wind, a slab of snow sliding off a rooftop, and a sudden, violent imbalance. Sarah lost her grip on the harness. Leo, buffeted by the wind, was pulled away. She stumbled, her cane plunging into deep, unpacked snow. She fell forward into the soft, terrifying embrace of a massive snowdrift forming against a neighbor's tall hedgerow. It was a perfect, deadly trap. The snow, light and powdery, swallowed her. She was buried not by an avalanche's force, but by the storm's relentless accumulation. She tried to push up, but more snow collapsed on her. She was under 2 feet of fresh powder in a shallow grave between a hedge and a buried stone wall. She could barely move. Her cries were muffled by the snow. Her body heat began creating the tiny air pockets that would both sustain her and create the scent that would save her. Meanwhile, Leo had circled back. His training was clear: find his person. He scrambled through the drifts, following her scent. He found the spot where she vanished. He barked. No response but the wind. He barked again, digging at the snow, but the snow kept falling, filling his efforts. His barks became frantic, persistent, a beacon of sound in the silent, white hell. This is where the two worlds collided. Mark, driving at a snail's pace, saw a flicker of movement in his headlights. A large golden dog barking incessantly at a snowbank next to a large colonial-style house. He slowed, worried the dog was hurt or lost. "Girls, stay in the car," he said, his voice tense. He cracked the door, the wind screaming in. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Leo turned, barked at him, then immediately turned back to the snowbank, digging with renewed urgency. Mark took a few steps forward, the snow up to his knees. He saw no owner. He saw no leash, just this dog desperately focused on one spot. That's when Chloe, the most observant of the triplets, rolled down her window a crack against his order. "Daddy, the doggy has a vest. It says service dog. Do not pet." Mark's blood ran cold. A service dog, alone, barking at a snowdrift. The pieces, the terrifying, impossible pieces, began to click together. He looked at the snowbank where Leo was fixated. It looked undisturbed, just a smooth, white slope against the hedge, but the dog knew something. The dog was sure asterisk. Mark took another step, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Hello," he shouted into the wind. "Is someone there?" Nothing. Just Leo's frantic barking and the shriek of the blizzard. He turned back to the car, to the three small, frightened faces watching him. He had a choice. Get his daughters home safe or investigate the desperate pleas of a dog in a storm. He made his choice. He opened the car door. "Girls, out now, we have to help." The triplets, wide-eyed, clambered into the deep snow. Mark pointed to the spot. "Stay behind me, something's wrong." He knelt beside Leo, who looked at him, whined, and scratched at the snow once more. Mark began to dig with his bare hands. The snow was deceptively deep. He dug for what felt like minutes, his fingers growing numb. He hit something soft, not the ground, fabric, a winter coat. He dug faster, a frantic, horrible energy taking over. He cleared away snow from a shape. He saw dark hair, a pale, motionless face. A woman curled on her side, her eyes closed. "Oh my God," Mark whispered. He felt for a pulse at her neck. It was there, faint, thready, but there, she was alive. But for how long? Hypothermia was already claiming her. And in that moment, as the triplets gasped and Leo licked the woman's frozen cheek, Mark faced the next impossible decision. He was alone with 3 6-year-olds in a blizzard with an unconscious woman buried in snow. His house was 5 blocks away. No one else was on the roads. His phone had no signal. They were utterly cut off. The clock, the invisible 15-minute clock that begins the moment someone is buried, was already halfway down. Mark's military training, a part of his life he'd buried deeper than the snow, kicked in. He'd been a combat medic. He knew the golden hour and he knew hypothermia. His own fear for his girls was a white-hot wire in his chest, but he compartmentalized it. He had 2 patients now, the unconscious woman and his 3 daughters. "Chloe, Emma, Sophie, listen to me. This is an emergency. We are this lady's only chance." Their little faces, pale with cold and fear, snapped to attention. His tone brooked no argument. "Chloe, you're in charge of Leo. Hold his harness, do not let go. Emma, Sophie, you are my diggers. Use your mittens, dig right here next to me. We have to get her out." He didn't wait. He resumed digging, clearing snow from the woman's torso, his hands now blocks of ice. The girls, inspired by his sudden command, dropped to their knees and began pawing at the snow with a shocking ferocity. They freed her legs, her arms. Mark hooked his hands under her shoulders. "On 3. 1, 2, 3, he pulled. She didn't budge. Her coat was snagged on something beneath the snow, a branch from the hedge, a buried garden ornament. He tore at the fabric, hearing it rip. He pulled again and she came free in a cloud of powder. He dragged her clear of the drift, laying her on her back in a slightly shallower patch of snow. Her skin was the color of wax. Her lips were blue. Her breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. Mark's mind raced through the protocol. Shelter. Warmth. Wet clothes off, but there was no shelter. The house behind them was dark, locked. Their car was running, a potential sanctuary 20 feet away through waist-deep snow. It was their only option. "We have to get her to the car now." He looked at his tiny team. "I'm going to carry her. You three, you make a path. Walk in front of me, pack the snow down with your feet. Chloe, you and Leo lead the way back to the car." It was a torturous, slow-moving procession. Mark, a big man, lifted the woman in a fireman's carry, her dead weight immense. Every step sank him deeper. The triplets, crying now from exhaustion and cold, trudged ahead, their small bodies doing little to compact the path. Leo pulled at his harness as if trying to guide them. The 20 feet felt like 20 miles. The wind stole their breath and their warmth. Finally, Mark reached the SUV. He fumbled with the keys, unlocked it, and laid the woman across the backseat. The triplets piled into the way-back cargo area, huddling together. Leo jumped in after them, whining. Mark turned the engine on full blast, cranking the heat. He knew the danger of carbon monoxide with a blocked tailpipe, so he cracked the driver's window, letting in a scream of freezing air. He had to get her wet clothes off. He rummaged in the grocery bags they'd abandoned. He found the girls' new fleece pajamas bought for Christmas. He found a blanket from a soccer game. He worked fast with a clinical detachment. He removed the woman's soaked coat, her sweater, her jeans. He wrapped her in the dry fleece, then the blanket. He checked her pulse again, weaker. Her core temperature was dropping fast. She needed active rewarming, something the car's heater couldn't provide. He remembered the hand warmers he'd bought for the girls' ski trip. He tore them open, activating the chemical heat, and tucked them under her armpits against her groin. Covered her with every scrap of fabric in the car, including the triplets' discarded coats. "Daddy, is she going to die?" Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. "Not today," Mark said, his voice raw. "Not on our watch." But he was out of moves. The car was trapped. The snow was piling up against the tires. His phone showed no bars. They were in a metal box, slowly being buried themselves. He had to get help. He had to leave them. The thought was a knife to the gut. He couldn't leave his daughters alone. But if he stayed, this woman would die. He made the call. "Girls, I have to run to that house," he said, pointing to the colonial with the hedgerow. "I have to break a window and call 911. You will stay locked in this car. Leo will stay with you. Do not open the door for anyone but me. Do you understand?" They nodded, their eyes huge. He kissed each of their foreheads. "I'll be right back, I promise." He plunged back into the storm. The distance to the house was 30 feet. It felt like crossing a frozen tundra. He reached the front door, pounding on it. No answer. He peered through a window, dark, empty, a vacation home. He picked up a heavy decorative stone from the garden and smashed a small pane of glass in the back door, reached in and unlocked it. He stumbled into a silent, cold kitchen. He found a landline, dead. The storm had taken out the power and the phones. He let out a roar of frustration. He was out of options. He was about to run back to the car when he saw it, a light, a flicker through the trees from the house behind this one. It was a porch light, a beacon. Someone was home. But to get there, he'd have to go through backyards, over fences in the blinding snow. He looked back at his car, a dim shape in the white. He had to try. He took off running. He vaulted a low fence, landed in a deep drift, fought his way through. His lungs burned. His legs were lead. He reached the next house, a modest split level with that glorious glowing porch light. He hammered on the door. An elderly man, Mr. Henderson, opened it, peering out with alarm. "My God, son, come in." "No time," Mark gasped, leaning on the doorframe. "There's a woman dying in my car. My 3 little girls are with her down the street. Call 911. Now." Mr. Henderson didn't hesitate. He shuffled to his landline and dialed. It rang and rang. The call connected to a recording. "All emergency lines are experiencing high volume due to the storm. Please stay on the line." They were in a queue. They were in a queue while Sarah Bennett's heart slowed. Mark felt the world tilt. "How long?" he barked. "I don't know," Mr. Henderson said, his hand shaking. Mark made another decision. He grabbed a notepad by the phone, scrawled his name, the address of the colonial, and "woman trapped in snow, hypothermia car on Maple Crest." He shoved it at Mr. Henderson. "Stay on the line. When you get through, give them this. I'm going back." He ran out the door, back into the maelstrom. The run back was worse. The wind was now a physical wall. He fell twice. He couldn't find the fence. He was disoriented. Panic, pure and primal, set in. He was lost in a white void, his daughters alone. Then he heard it, a bark. A sharp, insistent bark cutting through the wind. Leo. He'd left the car window cracked. The dog was barking, a sonic beacon. Mark followed the sound, stumbling toward it like a man toward a lighthouse. He found the car, now half submerged in a drift. He wrenched the door open. The triplets were sobbing. Leo was standing on the console, barking out the cracked window. The woman, Sarah, was not moving. Her chest was still. Mark's heart stopped. He leaned in, feeling for a pulse. Nothing. No, 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 no. He pulled her onto the floor of the car in the footwell. He began CPR. 30 chest compressions, 2 breaths. He'd done this 100 times in training, never on a real person, never in the back of his SUV with his children watching. Come on, he grunted with each compression. Come back. He did another cycle and another. His own muscles screamed. He was about to start a 4th round when Sarah's body jerked. A wet, ragged gasp tore from her throat. Her eyes flew open, unseeing, terrified. She was back, for now. But she was seizing, her body shivering violently, a good sign, her nervous system fighting back. Mark held her, wrapping the blanket tighter. It's okay, you're okay. My name is Mark, you're safe. Her eyes rolled back and she fell unconscious again, but her breathing was stronger. The CPR had worked, but they were still trapped. The car was now a tomb of ice, the windows completely frosted over. The heater was losing the battle. The triplets' cries had subsided into exhausted whimpers. They were all slipping toward hypothermia. Mark looked at the fuel gauge. A quarter tank. Maybe an hour of heat left. He had gambled on a 911 call that might never come. He had just performed CPR in a blizzard, and he had absolutely no idea what to do next. In the frozen silence of the car, a new sound cut through the wind, the distant, growing roar of a snowplow. Mark's head snapped up. Hope, raw and painful, flared in his chest. He wiped a hole in the fogged windshield. Down the street, a yellow beacon of light strobed through the white. The town plow clearing Maple Crest. Girls, they're coming. He threw open the driver's door, stumbling into the storm, waving his arms frantically. Hey, over here. The plow, a massive orange beast with a blinding headlight, continued its methodical path, pushing a 6-foot wall of snow ahead of it. The driver, cocooned in his heated cab with music blaring, didn't see him. Didn't see the trapped SUV the plow passed by on the opposite side of the street, its wave of snow crashing over the hood of Mark's car, sealing them in even further. Then it was gone, the roar fading, the beacon disappearing. The silence it left behind was more crushing than before. Mark slumped against the car, defeated. They were invisible. Back inside, the situation was deteriorating. Sarah's breathing had become erratic again. The triplets were no longer crying. They were too quiet, a dangerous sign of advancing hypothermia. Chloe whispered, "Daddy, I'm so sleepy." No sleeping, Chloe. You have to stay awake, all of you. Sing with me." Mark began singing a silly camp song, his voice breaking. The girls joined in weakly. It was a heartbreaking sound against the storm's howl. Leo, sensing the shift in energy, began to pace in the cramped space, whining. Then he stopped. He put his front paws on the center console, his nose pressed against the windshield. He let out a single sharp bark, not the frantic bark from before, a different one. A focused, alert bark. He was looking at something. Mark followed his gaze. Through the cleared spot, he saw it. The porch light from Mr. Henderson's house, the one he'd run to, was now flashing. On, off, a deliberate signal. He got through, Mark breathed. He got through to 911. The flashing light was a message. Help is coming, hold on, but how long, and could they even get here? The storm was at its peak. Roads were impassable. Emergency services were overwhelmed. The flashing light was hope, but it was hope on the horizon of a frozen wasteland. Mark had to buy more time. He turned to the girls, a new plan forming. We're going to play a game, the warmest blanket game. We're all going to get in the back and we're going to huddle together with the lady. Our body heat will keep her warm. It will keep us warm too. He maneuvered Sarah more securely onto the backseat. Then he helped the triplets climb over the seats. They formed a tight pod around Sarah, Mark on one side, the 3 girls pressed close on the other, all under the pile of blankets and coats. Leo curled at their feet, a living, breathing hot water bottle. The shared warmth was immediate, a tiny pocket of life in the frozen metal shell. In that close, dark huddle, time lost meaning. Minutes stretched into eternities. Mark told stories. He told them about their mom. He promised them trips to the beach when summer came. He kept checking Sarah's pulse, counting the shallow breaths. He was running a mental triage. Sarah was priority one, but his daughters were slipping. Emma's shivering had stopped. That was the red flag. When shivering stops, the body is abandoning the fight. Emma, squeeze my hand, hard as you can. Her grip was feeble. Okay, bug, keep squeezing. Suddenly, Leo's head jerked up. He let out a low growl. Then a new sound, not the wind, a deep mechanical asterisk thump thump thump. Getting closer. Through the snow-muffled world, it was unmistakable. A helicopter, search and rescue. The flashing light had worked. The cavalry was in the air. Mark scrambled, disentangling himself from the huddle back to the driver's seat. He saw a piercing white spotlight sweeping the ground, slicing through the snowfall. It was a National Guard Black Hawk, diverted from a statewide emergency. It circled, its spotlight searching for the car for any sign of life. Mark had no flares, no way to signal. He grabbed the car's flashlight from the glove box, but its beam was pathetic against the blizzard. He flashed it uselessly at the sky. The helicopter continued its search pattern, moving away. They were going to be missed. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Mark laid on the horn, a long, continuous blaring wail that cut through the rotor noise. The triplets covered their ears. Leo barked. The spotlight stopped its sweep. It swung back. It pinned the SUV in its brilliant, blinding eye. They were seen. The Black Hawk hovered overhead, the downwash from its rotors creating a temporary snow tornado. A rescuer was winched down into the maelstrom. He landed knee-deep in a drift, fought his way to the car. Mark opened the door. The rescuer, a young guardsman named Alvarez, took in the scene. The unconscious woman, the three pale children, the dog, the exhausted father. "Holy shit," he muttered, then snapped into professional mode. "We're taking the woman and the children first. You and the dog next." A rescue basket was lowered. Alvarez and Mark carefully loaded Sarah into it, securing her. She was winched up into the belly of the helicopter. Next came the triplets. One by one, they were strapped into the basket, terrified but brave, lifted into the sky. Mark watched them go, a part of his soul ascending with them. Finally, it was his and Leo's turn. As they were being harnessed together into the basket, Alvarez looked at Mark. "You saved her life, you know. CPR in these conditions. That's a miracle." Mark just nodded, numb. The winch pulled them up into the roaring, vibrating chaos of the helicopter. Inside, it was loud and warm. A medic was already working on Sarah, starting an IV. The triplets were wrapped in space blankets, drinking warm juice from a thermos. Leo, bewildered, lay across their feet. They were safe. As the Black Hawk banked toward the regional hospital, Mark looked down at the disappearing street, the buried car, the spot where it all began. The immediate fight was over. But he knew with a sinking certainty that the storm had changed everything. His daughters had witnessed a brush with death. A stranger's life was hanging by a thread because of their actions, and he had no idea who this woman was or what her life meant. The rescue was just the beginning. The aftermath, the connections, the quiet heroism of a dog named Leo, and the profound debt between two families thrown together by snow and chance, that story was just lifting off the ground. At the hospital, in the sterile glow of the emergency room, the two separate strands of this story began to braid together in ways no one could have predicted. Sarah Bennett was rushed into intensive care. Her core temperature had dropped to a dangerous 89 degrees Fahrenheit. She had severe hypothermia and early-stage frostbite on her fingers and toes. The medical team used warm IV fluids and specialized blankets to slowly, carefully raise her temperature. Too fast and she could go into cardiac arrest. For 12 critical hours, she hovered between worlds. Mark and the triplets, treated for mild hypothermia and released, refused to leave the waiting room. They stayed, huddled under hospital blankets, Leo at their feet. Mark had called Sarah's emergency contact, her older sister, Laura, who lived 2 hours away. Laura arrived at the hospital just after midnight, her face etched with panic. When Mark introduced himself as the man who found her sister, Laura broke down in tears. The doctor said if she'd been out there another 15 minutes, she couldn't finish the sentence. She hugged Mark, a complete stranger, and thanked him over and over, but Mark shook his head. "Don't thank me, thank him." He pointed to Leo, who thumped his tail on the floor. He's the one who told us she was there. That's when Laura told them the rest of Sarah's story. Sarah's visual impairment was progressive. She was going completely blind. Leo was more than her guide, he was her anchor to independence. She was a talented ceramic artist, her sense of touch, her connection to her art. The thought of losing her fingers to frostbite was a devastation on top of devastation. As dawn broke, a doctor emerged with news. Sarah was stable. Her temperature was normal. The frostbite was treatable. She would likely retain full use of her hands. And she was awake, asking for the man and the girls who saved her. The first meeting was quiet, charged with an unspoken gravity. Mark led his daughters into Sarah's room. She was propped up in bed, an IV in her arm, her hands bandaged. Her eyes, a soft hazel, couldn't see them clearly, but she turned toward the sound of their footsteps. "Hi," she said, her voice raspy from the breathing tube. "My sister says I have you to thank for my life." Chloe, ever the spokesperson, stepped forward. "Our dog found you, Leo," he barked. A smile touched Sarah's lips. "I know. I heard him. He was the last thing I heard before the snow got too quiet." She reached a bandaged hand out vaguely. Can I meet him?" The nurses made an exception. Leo was led in, his nails clicking on the tile. He went straight to Sarah's bedside, resting his head gently on the mattress. She buried her fingers in his fur, and for the first time she cried, quiet, relieved sobs. "Good boy," she whispered. "My good boy." In that moment, the rescue became more than an event. It became a bond. The local news, sniffing out a feel-good story in a week of bleak storm coverage, descended. The headline wrote itself: "Triplets and service dog save blind woman buried in blizzard." Suddenly, Mark, his daughters, Sarah and Leo, were minor celebrities. But the spotlight revealed something unexpected. A photo of Mark in his winter parka, kneeling in the snow, was published. 2 days later, Mark received a phone call. It was a man named David Chen, a former sergeant from Mark's old medevac unit in Afghanistan. "Saw your picture in the news, Doc," Chen said, using Mark's old nickname. "Always knew you'd be saving lives out of uniform." That call led to another and another. Old buddies from his service days reached out, men he hadn't spoken to in years. They didn't just call to congratulate him. They called because they saw a man who hadn't let the darkness win. For Mark, who had quietly struggled with the isolation of being a widowed father and the lingering ghosts of his combat service, it was a lifeline he didn't know he needed. His heroism became a bridge back to a part of himself he'd closed off. For the triplets, the attention was confusing but ultimately healing. They were hailed as heroes at school. They drew pictures of the rescue for weeks in therapy, slowly processing the fear. But they also learned a powerful lesson about compassion and bravery. They learned that their daddy was a superhero long before the blizzard, and they became fiercely, protectively attached to Sarah and Leo. Sarah's recovery was physical and psychological. The trauma of being buried alive, of suffocating in the cold dark, left her with intense anxiety. She was afraid to go outside in the snow, afraid to be alone. Mark and the girls, and especially Leo, became her support network. On her first day back at her home, it was Mark who shoveled her walk. The girls who made her welcome home cards in bright, bold colors she could perceive. And it was Leo who never left her side, his calm presence a constant reassurance. A month after the storm, Laura approached Mark with an idea. A local charity that trained service dogs wanted to honor Leo. They wanted to present him with a Canine Hero Award at a small ceremony. They wanted the whole family there. The ceremony was held at the community center. Leo wore a new blue harness. Sarah, her hands healed, held his leash. Mark and the triplets sat in the front row. The director spoke about the incredible partnership between human and dog, about Leo's loyalty that transcended his training. Then she called Sarah up. As Sarah spoke about that day, about the terror and then the sound of barking, about the hands that dug her out, she began to cry. She talked about getting a second chance at life and about the unexpected family that came with it. She turned to Mark and the girls. "You didn't just save my life, you gave me back my world." Then came the surprising detail, the twist that cemented their fates together. After the ceremony, Sarah asked Mark to stay behind. She had something for him. She handed him a small, heavy box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a ceramic bowl. It was stunningly beautiful, glazed in deep blues and whites with a textured spiral pattern that flowed from the center. "I made this," Sarah said softly, "before the storm. It's called Winter Vortex. I was trying to capture the feeling of a blizzard, the chaos, but also the strange peace inside it." Mark ran his fingers over the smooth glaze. "It's incredible." "I want you to have it," Sarah said. "My sister told me about your wife, Emily. She told me she loved pottery." Mark's breath caught. It was true. Emily had a small collection of handmade ceramics. "How did you—" "I didn't," Sarah said. "But when Laura told me, it felt like a sign. Like this piece was meant for you all along. It's not a thank you. Those words aren't big enough. It's a connection." Mark accepted the bowl, his throat tight. In that moment, their relationship shifted again. They were no longer rescuer and victim. They were two wounded people, one grieving a loss, one grappling with a progressive disability, who had found in each other an understanding that ran deeper than words. They had been brought together by the worst storm in a generation, and in its aftermath, they were building a shelter of their own. 6 months later, on a bright summer day, the two families, Mark and his triplets, Sarah and Leo, are a common sight in the neighborhood. The girls lead Sarah on walks, proudly sharing the duty with Leo. Mark helps Sarah with household repairs, and in return, she teaches the girls the basics of pottery, their small hands learning to see through touch. The Winter Vortex bowl sits on Mark's mantle, a permanent reminder of the day fate, in the form of a golden retriever's nose, decided to rewrite their stories. The blizzard tested them with cold, fear, and isolation. But what emerged was a lesson in warmth, in courage, and in the unspoken loyalty that can exist between a dog and his person, and between strangers who become family. The storm ended, but for them, a new season had just begun. So what does this story leave us with, beyond a miraculous rescue in the snow? It leaves us with a profound reminder of our interconnectedness. In an age of curated digital lives and deepening social divides, a blizzard forced a moment of raw, unfiltered humanity. A father's instinct, a dog's loyalty, and a child's innocence converged to defy statistics and the indifferent fury of nature. We're left to wonder, how many invisible threads connect us to the people around us, threads we only notice when they're pulled taut by crisis. Sarah's life was saved because a dog performed a duty born of love, and a man remembered a duty born of service. It underscores a terrifying and beautiful truth. Sometimes, the person who saves you isn't a first responder in an official vehicle. They're the neighbor you've never met, driving home from the grocery store with his kids. It also forces us to look at service animals not as accessories, but as partners endowed with a breathtaking, innate intelligence. Leo's actions that night were a blend of rigorous training and something deeper, an unbreakable bond that compelled him to become a beacon when his human was lost. His story, and the thousands like it from search and rescue dogs worldwide, challenges our understanding of animal consciousness and loyalty. For Mark and his daughters, the storm became a crucible. It tested their resilience and reforged their family identity around an act of profound courage. It brought Mark back from the isolation of grief and reintroduced him to a version of himself he thought was buried. For Sarah, it was a second Genesis, a confrontation with absolute vulnerability that led not to lasting fear, but to an expanded circle of love and support. Their story didn't end with the helicopter ride. It began there. It's a testament to the fact that trauma can be an ending, but it can also be a strange, painful beginning of something stronger and more connected. So the next time a storm warning flashes on your screen, or you see a service animal working quietly in public, or you pass a stranger on your street, remember the potential for quiet heroism that exists in ordinary moments. Remember that beneath the surface of our daily routines, we are all capable of extraordinary compassion, and we are all worthy of being found. If this story of courage, loyalty, and unexpected family touched you, please show your support. Like this video to help share this remarkable true story with others. Share it with a friend who needs a reminder of the good in the world. And subscribe to the channel for more documentaries that explore the incredible bonds that define the human experience. Thanks for watching.